Welcome back to the Larry Hembree pregame show. We're on our Where Are They Now segment, and tonight we're talking with 1947 graduate Paul Bruner Sr. Paul, how you doing this evening?
Just fine.
Paul, you were a ball player in 1947. You actually played varsity, I understand, all 4 years. Why don't you recant how you come about to making the ball team as a freshman?
Well, I had a brother, Junie, that played that year, and he got held back for a year when he was in the first grade, and he was 19 years old when he was a senior. And of course, everybody knows we were in the middle of the World War II at that time, and he got drafted in January the 8th. He had to go to the Army, and Chrysler was the coach at that time, and I just happened to be the 11th man. And whenever he went to the Army, well, I got his suit, so that's how I made the team when I was a freshman.
And then as a sophomore, you guys had a pretty decent season, and you made it into the Final Four, as I recall. Was it the Final Four in the Wabash Valley?
Yes.
The finals?
Mm-hmm.
And you got beat by a Bridgeport, Illinois team, but the Wabash Valley that year had 114 teams in it. How important was the Wabash Valley when you played basketball?
Back then, it was just almost like a sectional. Everybody in the area played, and it was really an honor to win the Wabash Valley. It was a lot more important than your regular holiday tournaments.
Well, it looks like in 1945, who were some of the players that were on that team, Paul?
Well, the players that really started and played the most were Dave Walker, Calvin Beasley, Russell Jones, Lester Wildman, and I think Ray Patterson was the starter. Billy Carter was about the first sub off the bench. And if everybody knows, back then, Chrysler and Costi both, you didn't play many subs. I mean, if you were on the starting five, unless you got in foul trouble, you pretty well played the whole game.
Now, this Dave Walker, he went on to play in college basketball, right?
Yes, he played at IU for Branch McCracken, and he did real good the first year, and then the second year, I guess 2 years. Then the war was over, and the boys started coming back, and they recruited some pretty, good ball players, and he kind of lost out.
All right, and looks like in 1945 in this Wabash Valley tournament, Paul, you guys took on a team called Freeland Ville and won that game 37-25, and then you beat maybe one of the best teams in the area that year in Linton. Yes,
Linton was rated, I think, in the top 10. They had a ball player by the name of Max Woolsey that was one of the best ball players in Indiana, and he went on to play pro ball after he graduated. And they were, of course, both thinking they were going to win it, and we upset them. And then we ran into a team from Bridgeport that I guess it was in Illinois, and they had a different set of rules than we had in Indiana. You could still play ball in Illinois at 21 years old, and they had a boy that came back from. He got wounded in the service, and he came home and went on back to high school. And they had three brothers. The name was Wagner, and they played all of them. And they were all good ball players, and they beat us 10 points in the semifinal round.
Yeah, and I was noticing in the Terre Haute Tribune-Star in 1945, in the headlines in the sports section, it says Loogootee in stunning upset win over Linton Miners. And this tournament there's a book out by Dean Kendall that's got the history of the Wabash Valley. It's very interesting to look through all the box scores and the articles. And of course, the Bridgeport, Illinois team, we're talking about the Wagner Brothers. As we're looking at at the box score here, Bridgeport beat Loogootee 52-42, and there was a Wagner that played forward, and a Wagner that played center, and a Wagner played guard. Your memory's very good, Paul. And one of the boys they had 15 points. One of them had 15 points. The other one had 13 points, and the other one had 5 points. So 18, 15, 33. Bridgeport's 52 points scored by three brothers. Very interesting. And but you went on and graduated in 1947. And who were some of the guys you played with then, Paul?
George Patterson and Buddy Boer, Donnie Patterson, and Shiner Livers, and me made up the starting five that year. And then, of course, we had some decent subs too. We had Frank Butcher, and I think Bob Stuckey was a sub, and I think maybe Chut Stuckey might have played that year too.
I just got to ask you, Paul, how did a guy get a name like Shiner Livers?
I don't know, but that's what everybody called him. I never knew where it came from, but back in my day, everybody had a nickname. I mean, you didn't call him by the first name. I mean, just like on the varsity, George Patterson was Bap, and Shiner Livers, and then you had Donnie Patterson was Spatsy, And Buddy Brewer, well, of course, his name was Wilford, and he called him Buddy, but and of course they called me Deadeye.
And why is that? Why did you have a dead eye? You can only see out of one eye, or what?
No, I was a pretty good shooter when I played. I guess it was just a knack that you either have or you don't have. I was kidding Larry one day and told him that if you go back and check the records, I wouldn't be surprised if I didn't shoot pretty near 50%.
Well, it maybe runs in the family. Who knows? Anyway, Paul, where did you, when you first started playing basketball as a kid, where did you really learn the game from, and how did you go about, developing your skills in basketball? Well, we had a big old barn out on the back, and my younger brother Gerald and older brother Junie, we all played out there, and then they had a goal at the schoolyard, and we'd go down there and play even when it was so cold that you had to wear gloves, and then a lot of times they would thaw out and the mud would be about a half-inch deep, and you tried to bounce the basketball and it wouldn't even bounce back, but we'd still played. Did you mainly just play with your brothers, or I know there wasn't a lot of people around out in that part of town where you grew up, where the Kearns Restaurants is right now, and there was your home there in a barn and you played ball there? Did you ever get any neighborhood kids over for ball games out there? Well, yeah, we had a lot of, mostly in summertime, it was baseball. We would play the south side, across the tracks. That was the south side. They would come out and we had a ball diamond out in the field, and we used to have some good ball games, and they had a field down there too. But as far as basketball, most of the time I just, when other people played, we played down at the schoolyard. And now your brother Gerald played after you did, and of course we had him on this show, and Gerald said a lot of nice things about you, Paul, but after you got off the air, he said he could never recall you ever beating him a game of one-on-one. Is that true or not? Well, actually, we didn't play a lot of one-on-one. Back when we were shooting around, we'd play what you call 21. Well, I called it long and short. You shot, and if you made your long, then you got to shoot your layup. And if you were a good enough shooter, every time you made your long and your short, then you go back and shoot again. And if you were hitting real good, you could go right through the whole game and not even have to let the other guy shoot. And I imagine Gerald didn't have much of a chance in that game when you were playing. Is that the case? Well, no, Gerald was a good shooter too. He was a good ball player. I can't say that he wasn't a good ball player. He was tough. Matter of fact, I'd say overall he was probably tougher than I was. You're gracious, Paul. When I do recall when I was about 6 or 7 years old, Donald, your brother Donald, who was living there, had a ball game or a ball goal behind his house, and when you would come over to visit Edna Jackson, your sister, a lot of times we'd end up down there shooting around, and that was a game that you always wanted us to all play, was 21. So that kind of ties in with that. Well, Paul, you, like I said, graduated in 47, and what have you been up to since then? Well, in a nutshell. In a nutshell. Well, of course, naturally, you went to work as soon as you got out of high school. Matter of fact, you went to work when you was big enough to go to work. You'd find a job. But I worked at Carnahan for 16 years and went to Crane and worked 25 there and retired. And I'm married to a school teacher here in town, formerly Judy Savage, and we've been married 10 years now. We have a nice home on Bel Air Village, and I just kind of sit back now and take it easy like an old retired man. Of course, I know where you sit at. You held season tickets at Loogootee for a long time. How long have you been coming to Loogootee ball games? Well, ever since I graduated from high school. Well, it was 1947. 1947, and of course you've seen a lot of good teams over the years, I'm sure, but you had a son that played on one of those good teams. Yeah, Paul Joel. He was a real good ball player. He played 4 years, and he graduated in 1971, but he went to the state in 1970, which was something that I could never forget. I mean, it was such a fabulous season, and then the next year, what a lot of people don't realize, they went to the final game of the semi-state in 71. And they beat some awfully good teams that year. They beat a Gersmar team that was tough in the regional, and then they beat a real tough Tell City team in the semifinal game of the semi-state. Well, Paul, in closing here, one with a comment. You played in a day when the class basketball or the thought of it wouldn't even be uttered, and now we have it. You've been around, seen both sides of things. What do you think about class basketball? I don't like it at all. I think the little teams enjoy playing the big teams, and even if they get beat about every time, they still want to compete with them. And then when they do beat them, they really accomplish something. And if I've got just a few more minutes or a few seconds, I'd like to mention a thing that I failed to mention on the other interview I had. I've always talked about my brothers that played and my son, but I had 3 nephews that played ball.
And a lot of you people won't even remember. Like, I had one nephew that played at Terre Haute Schulte. He was my oldest sister's boy. His name was Joe Darbitt. He played in the late 50s. And I had another nephew, Danny Bruner, which is Donald's boy, who played in the mid 60s. And then I had another nephew that I think everybody might know. His name was Larry Hembree, and he played 4 years at Loogootee, and he was an awfully good ball player too.
Well, that's I was actually a great nephew, but I appreciate that. And of course, Edna Jackson being my grandmother and your sister. Paul, well, we're getting down to the sectional time, and you've been to most of the Loogootee games this year. How do you like their chances?
Well, Loogootee seems to be off and on. They play some awfully good ball, and then the next game they seem like they just can't put it together. But overall, they have had a good season, and they've got a decent ball club. And if they want to get in there and play, I don't see any reason why they can't win the sectional.
All right. Well, Paul, I really appreciate you coming by tonight, and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.